Okay, so we're back with live with Harrowings, and we are live now with Camilo Zambrano, and we've been talking a little bit about his latest post about quests on his Substack called Self Disciplined. So we've got some folks joining us in already. Joel Drasner, no point B. That's a good point. And Camilo, over to you. You want to talk to me a little bit about this hyper discipline to adventure, a questful approach?
Yeah. Um, I like to collaborate. We were just discussing before starting this.
Yeah.
I like to hear from others' perspectives, and I think that's one of the things that like has become a point of interest for self discipline. To bring other people's perspectives and stories or like interesting ideas that are related to discipline that overlap with what I talk about, and that post is precisely that. It's essentially telling a little bit the story of how I met Danielle, which is the guest writer
Right.
of the week. The story of how I met her is kind of funny because I was looking for somebody who could help me on my journey of becoming a better communicator, a better public speaker. I'm trying to get into that world, trying to be able to spread the word about the framework that I'm trying to build, adaptable discipline, like in a
Adaptable
better way.
discipline. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I don't know if you have read about that yet, but and for the people that are here already, it's the framework that in where I have put together the pieces that have helped me become a more disciplined person, like develop discipline in a way that doesn't burn me out. If you are sort of tired of traditional discipline, like the myth of you have to obsess basically to get things done, I think that framework can be a little bit of a refreshing word. And well, my whole idea was to look for help to be able to spread the word about that in a way that was better, and that also helped me with my ability to speak in native English, because I'm my original language is Spanish. I don't I moved to the US and I spoke English, but along the years I was able to make ideas sound better and connect the dots better. So that's kind of how I got to her. I was trying to get her help to like to give me a hand on like improving all of these things. And while she was not able to um, help me at that point with that specific topic, just because she was like focusing on this new venture,
yep.
We were able to like to see that our ideas were overlapping, and I was able to notice that the quests that she was talking about were a really good tool to help people actually embrace discipline in a more didactic, educational way, in a way that doesn't make you feel, punished. Because that's the concept that discipline, a lot of people have about discipline. Even my parents, I was talking with my parents today, and the idea that my parents were talking, to me about discipline was the idea of willpower, right? Like you gotta push through. If you don't push through, um, like you suck basically, right? That's kind of what we all know. That's kind of how our generation, and maybe this century generation has an idea of discipline. And given that my approach is a little bit different, I think quests fit the best with that approach. And that's kind of how it come this collaboration that we posted today, which I
Right.
think it has resonated a lot right now. And I'm very glad that you brought it up, because I personally like it a lot. And I'm trying to get into a quest myself, like make the public speaking adventure a little bit more formal through a quest, which Daniel will want to try to help me with that as well. But yeah, it was just like a fantastic serendipity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is a serendipitous thing. When I was reading about it a little bit, um, Daniela Craig, is that how you pronounce her name? Craig?
Uh, I believe so. Yeah, I actually
It's
haven't asked.
Krage. So, and we are talking a little bit about, for those who just joined, Camilo's latest post, From Hyperdiscipline to Adventure, A Questful Approach, which is a collaboration which he co-wrote with Danielle Craig, I'm assuming. That's how it's pronounced anyway. And her site or project is called Questful World. So you go to www.questfulworld, www.questful.world is her website. And I haven't gone there yet myself to check it out. But when reading about this, when you turned it over to her and she started to write about it, and she was talking about self discipline dialed up to 12 and how she was a straight A student, never slipped up, won a scholarship. She was just so good. And she got seated at the naughty table to be an example to the other kids, and didn't win any friends doing that, she mentions. It just sort of resonated with me because I remember when I was a kid, if we weren't making good grades, my sister and I, and my sister actually told me this, that I didn't feel this, I don't think, quite as strongly as she did, and probably showed in my lack of being as good a student as she was. And she felt that if she didn't bring home straight A's, that she would not have her parents' love.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's a hell of a burden to put on a kid, right? Growing up.
Yeah.
That made her very disciplined. She was much more structured. She also got a lot more discipline from my mother in the form of punishment, right? So that's spilling out even now. She's 65, I'm 62, and oddly enough, there's still these same dynamics happening with my poor mother, who's now 86 and in a senior living facility. Anyhow, and then my mother's mind is sort of slipping away, and no matter how much discipline we had, and then my folks were pretty disciplined when it came to their work. They had this strong work ethic. They were coming out of the 1950s, right?
Right.
And it was a different culture then than it is now. And it was a different culture than my sister and I grew up around in the 1970s. The 60s had happened, and the 70s basically were sort of a capitalization. They called it the me generation of all things. And maybe there is a certain self-centeredness to our generation. I think that sort of spilled over into the future as well, because you see the generations coming up and how we're distracted all the time, and how to have discipline to be able to embark on a quest and
Right.
accomplish something becomes increasingly difficult because of all the distractions. I'm beginning to ramble, so I'm going to turn it back over to you. What did you pick up from that?
I think what you mentioned is like super interesting because I do think that generations like we have put like a very big interest on outputs. Like I think that's kind of part of the problem on how why we are where we are today with discipline because we have put a lot of attention in output, right? And that has been something that has happened since like the industrial revolution. Like progressively, we have like focused more on output rather than like other components that can make us feel more disciplined, and that has translated in different parts of the system, right? Like educational system and how we acquire different the discipline from our families, and what happens is that progressively through the generations, right, we become less disciplined because we have technology there, bombarding us with media, bombarding us with maybe fake ideas of what discipline is, right? You see all these influencers like telling you, you gotta meditate, you gotta wake up early, you gotta consume this product, you gotta do X, Y, Z things, right? And at the
Right.
same time, um, we are less disciplined, but at the same time, the world ask more about from us, ask more output. So basically, it started a gap started happening there, in where like more output is required and less, less productivity or less discipline is coming from the newer generations. So that's the pain point that I'm also trying to address, right? That all of that starts with how we perceive discipline. Because if we perceive discipline as willpower, if we perceive discipline as just mere results or effectiveness, right, we will like be very gullible to all the blueprints, all the systems that are around, but we'll really gonna get nowhere. While if we can assimilate the roots of discipline, which is the Latin word comes from the Latin word disciplina, which means instruction, right? Means learning. If we embrace those roots, like we will be able to see the world differently. We will be able to become more close to those outputs that we're looking for in a way that is indirect, and will a lot of like personal satisfaction will come with that, because like we will embark in our own personal journeys that will bring all of this effectiveness that the industry, the world, like is looking for from us. So I do resonate a lot with what you're saying, because it
Mhm.
was my case was the same. I was like the student that got good grades, that got things done, that was like sort of the example at some point. But progressively, I started seeing that the expectations of me were like fixed, and because of that, I also had expectations for myself. And when I
Right.
didn't meet those expectations, I was feeling shameful, or fearful, right? So just like you were describing about your sister. So I do see that like if we don't make a change on that way,
Yeah.
newer generations will get more and more frustrated because the world is asking more from them, and basically they're progressively getting more ashamed, just for the way that they are wired, for the way that how they do things.
Right. We do expect sort of an inhuman machine like performance out of our children sometimes. And we want to give them the instructions, right, for how to make it in the world. And the
Right.
messages we get from media and such are unrealistic, have been for many years now, of that the ideal family should be like, for instance. And we know better, now that we know a lot more about the different families that have been projected onto the screens. There are very few that are actually doing what has been depicted to us in these little bites. In fact, I remember having a German professor who told me that he thought a lot of our problem was that we thought that all of our problems should be solvable in 30 minutes. It's the
Mhm.
length of a sitcom, you know,
Right.
and that's not realistic.
Yeah.
The quest idea, and another thing you were talking about output, and I think instead of output, instead of being focused on what output am I expecting to get and how will I measure my success by that output, right? That's sort of not the thing, but rather to go on the quest, have the adventure, and discover what might be surprising and unexpected
Mhm.
in that quest. So am I picking up the right vibe off of that idea?
Absolutely. I think you're picking it like spot on. I think if you it's a very subtle change that you can
Mhm.
make, but if you reframe your thoughts on, rather than like, hey, I want to do this, right? I want to learn to play the piano, right? I want to learn to speak Mandarin, right? What I talk more about, or my idea is to embrace a little bit more of like a what if mentality. Like, what if I learn to play the piano? What will I discover by doing that? Maybe I will discover that I'm not made for piano, and that's fine. Or maybe I'll discover that it's fun, and while I'm maybe not very good, I still like to play piano, right?
Huh?
And same with so many other adventures, or aspects of our life, right? So that's what I think where the power of quest comes. It's like it gives you the space to learn in a self-contained space of time, and with specific goals that can help you, develop that muscle, of that what you want to develop, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. I mean, and to me, it's about practice,
Yeah.
right? I would take the word discipline and replace it with practice because if I've got to practice, if I've got a method of engaging with the world, it becomes less of a add-on to my exterior, of how I'm engaging with the world and becomes more of an interior architecture. And here I'm ripping off the words of Robert Fripp, and I might have actually used them last time we interviewed with each other. Where he says in the inside jacket of his book called The Guitar Circle that without a practice, things are just like contingent, just one event after another, or just sleeping through it all, right? Which I do sometimes. I'll sleep through a whole day sometimes just to let myself do that and not beat myself up for it because it's part of my practice. It's part of the recharging of going down into the unconscious and doing the dream work, for instance. Now, Robert Fripp was following a guy named J.G. Bennett, John Godolphin Bennett, who had this thing called Sherburne House, where they were following the work and way of G.I. Gurdjieff. And I don't know if I've talked to you about G.I. Gurdjieff or not, or the name it might be familiar.
I think so, yeah.
He had something he called the fourth way. There was like the way of the guru, the way of the sage, the way of the faker. And then the fourth way was like to do your work in the world and not try to be anything special, not trying to be a guru, not trying to be a faker or anything else. But being Camilo, being Hal, we go out there in the world and we do our work. For me, a lot of that work these days is getting out there and taking this little phone I have with the technology embedded in it by Substack, thank God, and clicking on go live, pointing the camera outwards and narrating whatever the heck I'm seeing or whatever's going through, one side and out the other. And I do think it's like that, right? What's emerging from us in our conversation is something more than just you and me talking. It's that synergy. I hate the word synergy, but it is. It's that combination of our understanding of each other, which may be fragmentary, may be total misunderstanding, but that also generates something, right? It's the friction points in which you can really learn stuff. When it gets tough, there's information in that, and it's not a time to panic. It's a time maybe to relax, observe, go with the flow, for instance. That's what I'm seeing in the ideas of, and maybe I'm projecting onto the ideas that you had with Danielle. So over to you. What do you think of all that?
What you say, that's fantastic because, like what you say about, even if there's a misunderstanding, there's also understanding, right? Like from that misunderstanding comes a new understanding. And it may sound a little bit meta to say that, but in reality, that's kind of how it is. Like from what we discussed, right? Even if you pick an idea, not necessarily in the way that I'm trying to say, your mere interpretation of that can also, increase the scope of what I'm talking about, right? And that's something that is super powerful because that's what I'm trying to do also with the collaborations that I do. Even with the written word, sometimes you may get into misunderstandings, and like you have the option of like talking with the author that I usually do if I don't understand something. But also when you read it, right, and you get your own understanding of that, and you collaborate, and you add that piece of you in the text, you create a whole new beast, right, that can change somebody's life, doing done the right way. So I think that aspect of collaboration, as you well said, like the synergy, is something that shown a lot into this article because the quest element that Danielle is trying to like spread around the world, right? Like through her coaching. I also took it and implemented as a way to exercise discipline. But maybe she didn't think about it at first, but once we discussed, it sort of like made sense and like the pieces fit. And for me, like that's one of the best serendipities that you can have when you're working on what you love.
Yeah. So tell me, how is business going on your end and getting this word out there? And are you getting some traction with that?
I'm getting traction, but like with this space, it's always like slow, right? Um, because it's a little bit deep, it's a little bit maybe boring for some people,
Hmm.
and it's understanding, like like there's so many better things to do that getting discipline, especially if it comes from this notion of like the traditional discipline that I'm talking about, right? Like the concept of discipline has been antagonized for so long that for some people, like the mere word discipline comes across as toxic, right?
Ah,
Especially people that have gone through, like military service, people that have gone, through the educational system, all of the institutions that have some sort of like um, a, like some sort of materialization of discipline in their routine, can create some sort of friction for people to like actually see what I'm talking about, and that's understandable. And I'm just taking things slowly. There has been growth, nevertheless, and I wish it was faster, but at the same time, the things happen for a reason.
right.
So I try to take it easy. I try to respect my readers. I try to honor them by providing valuable valuable knowledge, and try to be as unbiased as possible when it comes to that. And in the background, a lot of other things are brewing. Like I'm working on a lot of other projects that are related to this, but I cannot divulge too much because I will ruin the surprise.
Yeah,
But
you gotta be
uh,
careful with that because there's 3 ways of getting the word around. You telegraph, telephone, and tell me. And I almost did that to my vocal coach, and she was, like, making some reference to some particular band that she might have something to do with later, but that's a secret, and I was the only one who knew anything about it, and I almost let the cat out of the bag as we were talking yesterday. I don't know if you saw my post today at all, but, I had one about, shock and then acceptance because a friend of mine, had a tree drop on her and killed her yesterday.
oh, that's so sad. Sorry.
Do not be, taking anything for granted is the strong message there. My
Yeah,
friend was
absolutely.
not old, she was walking her dogs, and boom, she's gone.
Where
I
is
don't
she?
think it was that quick either. I think she died of her injuries in hospital. I'm not positive, I haven't got all the details, but I was shocked when I heard from the young woman who, has happened to send me her gratitude list. We do that as sort of part of the practice, right? Write a gratitude list every morning. Now that's may sound like that's like, "Oh, meditate every morning, you must do this or you get punished." I don't do it routine in any type of, like, normal rhythm or anything. It's just, like, when it strikes me to do it, and particularly when I get one from my friend Jen, because she lost both her mother and her brother to suicide. If she can do a gratitude list, I can damn well do one, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And then we
And
send those off in all kinds of directions, and you never know. It'll land in somebody's retina somewhere, and it might actually spark
absolutely.
a ripple effect. And that's what I'm thinking about. You pass it forward, you pass on your discipline, your practice, and in doing your practice, you can't help but impact other people's lives. And if you're doing
Yeah.
it with intention and awareness, being awake to the reality of life and how precious it is. Have you ever heard that one where it says, tell your friends you love them, do it a lot, make it weird?
I hadn't heard
Uh,
about that, but makes sense.
that's what one suggestion I would give to everyone based on the fact of Nora Davison's death yesterday. She was a perfectly lovely, healthy person who was out of this world in a split second, or very little time, like just, woke up that morning expecting to go on with a long life, and it was cut off by a tree falling on her.
Yeah. Life
It's
is
really
short.
shocking, really a wake up call to all of us to really, if you're breathing, there's an opportunity for gratitude. There's an opportunity to really feel invigorated by the breath. And by the way, at any given moment, we're like 2 minutes from death because
Right.
if you stop breathing, 2 minutes is about tops. At least for me.
Yeah.
Some people are more disciplined about their breathing, right, and can do it
Right.
longer, but dive further or whatever. But by and large, it's hard to stay in the game. I'm looking at our guests here, and we have Richard Hogan, MD. We have Enemies of Art. We have Letitia Wright, Lost Vibes 100, part of my board of directors, my paid subscribers, in other words. AJS Downs, one, Lee, George Shea, and Joel Drasner. So that's great. Lovely to have you all with us. If you have questions for us or comments, you can write them into the messages and I'll try to pay attention. Um, yeah, I'm doing something. Speaking of this, Danielle, you engaged with and you amplified her Quest World, right? Quest.world is a place to go, HTTPS quest.world. Um, I'm doing something similar with somebody else. They popped onto Substack just about a month ago, wrote something about loneliness because apparently some of her clients had ghosted her and she was a coach. So I'm thinking, I haven't quite pulled the trigger yet, but within the next day, let me see what day it is. I think I've got till the 27th to, yeah, I've got 3 days to make payment to her to engage her services for a period of 4 months. And I was looking over her various testimonials from her clients. And you know what her website's called?
How's it called?
It's called IfuckingHateMyJob.com.
Oh, that's an interesting name.
It is an interesting name, and well, catch your eye, right? In the way that
Yeah, absolutely.
she's British, so when the British use that kind of language, it's not as strong as when Americans use it. Anyway, and I trust the I think you called it the serendipity, right? The happy accident of your connection to Danielle. I
Yeah.
sort of trust that vibe
I
and see
mean,
what it goes. Go ahead.
yeah. Like the mere serendipity of like getting to like to know you, right? Like to be able to do this together too, like
Mhm,
I do believe in serendipity, as I said, I believe in entropy. I believe that, things happen for a reason, and because of that, while taking things easy, that doesn't mean that you have to, keep low, right? Life is too short, and one thing that I like to tell my wife sometimes is that I think of myself as I'm not too important, right? I I don't take things. I try not to take things too personally, so I just keep moving. I just keep like spread the word about what I believe on, and like because you never know that if tomorrow or like an hour from now is your last moment, right?
mhm.
So I want to be able to not hold grudges, to like be able to hug my kids all the time, to be able to repair when I make a mistake,
Yeah.
and I do truly believe on that. So I think I think what you said makes a lot of sense and resonates a lot. And what you're doing for this person, I think it's also very important because the world is small, and for sure it will pay off, pay back somehow to you.
Well, yeah, I mean, we do amplify each other's signals through the noise of cyberspace, is the way I like to put it. I think of myself as an amplifier, right? Just like you hook me
Sure, yeah,
in and you give me a signal, I'm going to blast that out and it's going to hit a lot of retinas and a lot of eardrums if I get the opportunity.
yeah.
Right now, we have the opportunity to touch 11 others who are watching or have watched.
12 now,
And
12
I don't know how much
now.
they've watched. I don't know really what they picked up from it, but it's always just you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I take the
Mhm.
shot and put that puck out there. Maybe it hits the net, maybe it doesn't. But at least I made the shot and gave it an opportunity to get in the net. That's an old hockey thing from Wayne Gretzky, right? Miss 100% of the
Mhm.
shots you don't take. The other thing that sprang to mind when we were talking is I want to be respectful of your time. I think you have a hard stop at 7 my time or the hour 4
I
your time.
I can expand a little bit if necessary. Yeah.
Well, I don't know that will be necessary. We've covered a lot of ground. I do want people to look at your website, and I want to plug that real quick. You want to, or maybe I'll let you plug it.
Yeah, you can visit. So I have two websites, right? One is Self Discipline, that is the community, www.self-disciplined.com. And the other website that I like to promote is the website for the framework that I'm trying to spread the word about, adaptable discipline. www.adaptable-discipline.com. You can find information there. Feel
Yep.
free to bring in questions. Feel free to join the community. We are all very welcoming, and I'm gonna do my best to help you develop the discipline that you will want to have. So um, yeah, I appreciate the opportunity again to chat with you.
Oh,
Had a lot of
sure.
fun, and thank you for amplifying. I think what you said of being like this big amplifier
Yeah.
pays back eventually. You create ripples, and I think that's the best legacy that one can create. So you're touching so many people right now. You might not realize, but like once you publish this, people will see it, right? Maybe asynchronously, but you will impact people. So
Yep,
thank you
I
for
hope so. We just had Richard Hogan, MD, PhD twice, and DBA. I still need to look up what DBA means. And he said, introspective wellness, Dr. Hogan. So maybe he's got something going there too. We want to amplify. Certainly, you can be a guest on Harrowings podcast. I'm always looking for new guests, and we'll have the Case Stoner show coming up on 10 o'clock on Friday. So don't miss that. It is 7 o'clock. Again, adaptable discipline is the framework. Self disciplined.com is the website. And I look at us right on the top of it right now. I
Look
was
at
looking
that.
at it on my
Look at that.
Pro, which is kind of nice. I'm out of sync with myself, but that's okay. I'm quite often I'm out of sync with myself. So thank you
Great.
again, Camilo, for joining me today. And I'll wrap it up here.
All right.
Thank you all for joining. I see Paul Kirkpatrick joined in late, but this will be out there as a recording as well. I will push it and it will go automatically into YouTube and Spotify and all kinds of places. Thanks for the hearts. And you're out. Take care, Camilo.
You
I'll
too.
see you again. It was really fun.